Good morning. Welcome to SEC Baseball Talk here at Southeastern 16. We're going to be previewing the weekend. Let's hope that the show lives up to the pre-show. I'm your host, Chris Lee, joined by Graham Doty, Jay Greason, Alfred Esmond. We have got about 35 minutes today, and in that, we are going to go kind of rapid fire. We're not going to talk about every series for this reason, because, look, a lot of these are mismatches. I don't think anybody expects St. Bonaventure to step into Knoxville and go toe-to-toe with the Vols. But what we are going to do is spend some time singling out series that could be sneakily interesting, singling out storylines that we want to watch with particular teams, pitching situations, health of guys, lineup combinations, whatever we find interesting. Without further delay, I'm going to kick it right off to Graham Doty. Give me a storyline or a series you're watching this weekend and why, as you do this from lovely, where are you again today?
Greenville, South Carolina, SEC Women's Basketball Tournament time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, the hometown of one Alfred Esmond.
That's right. That's right.
Let's go.
And Alfred, where are you today?
Right outside of Greenville, home of the SEC Women's Basketball Tournament. Right.
Yeah.
So in the same neighborhood, we should catch up, Graham, after this.
Yeah, when I pulled into town, it said, "Welcome to Greenville, home of Alfred Esmond," like right there on the
What do you know?
What do you know? All right, Graham, kick us off. Storyline you're watching this weekend.
For me, I got two. Number one is Arkansas, just pitching wise. We know the injury to Wood. And then also Gavin Gackle, his last two outings. I think Arkansas is going to be fine. I think they're going to handle Portland, but I just want to see if they're pitching, which has always been their strength lately, what that looks like this weekend. And then my number two is Alabama. They had a nice win last night against Troy and just kind of want to see if they stay hot. They're taking on a Presbyterian team, and you just want to see if they will continue to stay undefeated or if they might drop one this weekend. But they're one of the hottest teams, not only in the SEC, but in the country.
Alfred, storyline or two that you're watching?
Yeah, I got just a couple really briefly. First of all, I mentioned this our last show or a couple shows ago. I can't really remember, but Texas versus Santa Clara. Not that I don't think Texas will lose this series. In fact, I think Texas will win this series, obviously. Santa Clara is heading into this series, wins over San Jose State about a week ago in a midweek, and then a series win against Cal, a bigger school than them. 3 out of 4 games is what they took in that one. So they may not go into Austin necessarily super afraid to take on Jim Schlossnagle's team. So that's something to keep an eye out there. Texas A&M guys, pretty good bounce back game last night for them. You had a lot of different guys get hit. Sawyer Farr, Jacob Galloway, Jamal George, Hayden Schott, Terrence Keel. The hits were spread out amongst them last night in their win against Texas Southern. Heading into this weekend against New Mexico State, can they continue that? This team really, really, really needs a good last few games before conference play. I'm sure Aggie fans agree. I'm sure college baseball fans in general agree with that. And then Florida, I feel like we should touch on some injury news we heard yesterday from them. After their win over Florida Atlantic, it was a dicey win, but they did get it done. We don't have an update on Cade Curlin yet. Pierce Coppola is out this weekend against Harvard. Aiden King is assumingly taking his place with a start. We know, Kevin O'Sullivan loves Aiden King, loves going to him. So I'm sure this was a pretty easy decision for him to make with Coppola injured. We assume it's a blister on his hand, but, apparently they have to get second opinions or something like that on the injury. And then Kyle Jones, some of their the Stetson transfer they have out for the season. I think a torn labrum is what I'm hearing about that. Tough blow for them. That just hurts their depth a little bit, but I'm sure they're fine sticking with Hayden Yost, Blake Sear, and then Ty Evans in the outfield for now. Harvard also not a good baseball team this year. 0-6. They've had a rough go at it. Florida should quite honestly sweep this with ease. But yeah, those are the 3 things I'm looking at. Texas, be careful against Santa Clara. Texas A&M, can they continue the momentum they gained against Texas Southern? And then how will Aiden King look in a weekend start against Harvard?
Jay Greason.
Yes, and I'm up here on the outskirts of lovely Chattanooga, Tennessee, which when you drive through, it says, "Welcome to the Scenic City." Alfred once drove through here, so I don't really know if we have the same claim as Greenville, but everybody just wants a little piece of Alfred, The only one that really gets my eye before we start talking about big picture and puzzle pieces and themes and storylines, Wofford can score, friends. I mean, they're averaging 8-9 runs a game. They're 10-2. I think Kentucky better buckle up or they're going to lose the series this weekend in Lexington.
Yeah. Stuff I'm watching. Arkansas pitching. We've known about Gabe Gackel's struggles. Obviously, Arkansas has got enough in the tank without him with all those arms, I think. But Portland, a team that threw out a perfect game last week, that one's kind of interesting to see where that goes. I don't think St. Bonaventure is going to push Tennessee at all, but the Vols have been playing around with lineup combinations. Airley Antigua is not much of a hitter, but he's a good fielder. I think if there's a weakness Tennessee's got, it's maybe defense on the infield at least. So that's kind of intriguing to see where Tony Vitello pushes the pieces around this weekend. To that, I think you've got Vanderbilt has been messing around with some parts, needing to find more power in the lineup. Tim Corbin has made a couple lineup changes here and there. Interested to see how Vanderbilt lines up against a Xavier team that I think is number 2 in the RPI and has been in regionals a lot lately. And I think just Texas A&M. I don't know the situation. I don't have inside information here. But it feels like when A&M is struggling as much as it is with the talent that it has, maybe it's more in your head than it is the other guy. And if it's in your head, then I think any respectable team is a danger in a game where some weird stuff will happen. So off the top, that's kind of where I'm going to go. Alfred, I'm going to throw it to you next because you've been the guy among all of us that's probably kept tabs on midweek baseball. Anything out of the midweeks yesterday or just in general maybe that you think carries over as a storyline, even if it's not for this weekend?
Kohio Aloy yesterday. Arkansas continued Tuesday's game because of a weather delay. I think it was like a 20-hour weather delay or something like that. In 9 pitches in that resumed game, he had a walk-off home run to end that first midweek that happened against Louisiana Monroe. Later in the day, they play the second matchup with Louisiana Monroe in the midweek. He homers again. And guys, that was contagious for this team, I think, because you had Kendall Diggs, hit a home run. Nolan Souza hit one. Charles Dalvon hit a home run as well. I think Vahiva Aloy was the other guy to hit a home run. Some Arkansas fan, if you're watching, correct me on that if that's wrong. But you had 5 guys along with Kohio that hit home runs. You talk about big transfer additions this year. Liam Doyle pops into mind. Noah Sullivan in Mississippi State pops into mind. I would like to say none have been bigger than Kohio Aloy. Quite honestly, I mean, this guy's leading the SEC in hitting and is just on a tear right now. Obviously, maybe he'll come back down to earth, but through non-conference play, man, he has been just the catalyst for this Arkansas offense. And it's an offense that's looked pretty good since, we talked about that little Kansas State blunder they had way back now in Arlington. So that's what stood out to me this midweek. And I thought it was awesome that, no one was in that ballpark when they resumed that game in Baum Walker. And it literally just a handful of pitches in, he just ends that first delayed matchup. So, yeah, Kohio Aloy continuing just to shine this year.
Graham, your turn.
To me, yesterday, the big 3 takeaways, Alabama, a nice win against Troy, Mississippi State. They just absolutely hammer Southern Miss in Starkville. Remember, they lost to Southern Miss 2 weeks ago. And then Ole Miss wins in thrilling fashion last night in extra innings, 8-7. So I'll start with Ole Miss. This is a game the last couple of years that Ole Miss would not have won. And it just kind of tells me that this season, at least, the Rebels are trending in the right direction. Had to score 2 runs in the bottom of the 9th, and then they just walked it off in the 10th. They still got out-hit by Murray State. Murray State had 13 hits, Ole Miss had 12. Murray State, off to a good start this season. That was their first loss of the season. Kind of a storyline. Rabe, the starting pitcher last night for Ole Miss, that was his first start in 2 years. He's from South Carolina. His parents made the trip to Oxford to be there. Just they wanted to see it in person. That was a fun storyline for Ole Miss. All these transfer outfielders continue to tear the cover off the baseball. Mormon had 3 hits last night. Isaac Humphrey had 2 hits. Judd Unimart hit 2 home runs. That guy is massive. I walked past him earlier this season at an Ole Miss basketball game, and he's just a machine. He's like 6'5", 250, and he's just a freak of an athlete. Mississippi State, just a confidence booster. They haven't really been playing at a high level as of late, and they win 18-3 over 20th ranked Southern Miss. They had 20 hits in the game. Reese, their big pickup from Houston, had 4 hits, or rather 3 hits, but he had 4 RBIs yesterday. So State looked really, really good. It's early in the season, obviously, but anytime you play an in-state rival, especially one that you already lost to earlier this season, that was a nice bounce back performance there from Mississippi State. And then Alabama, beating a very good Troy team. Troy's 19th in the country. Troy out-hits Bama, but Bama just finds a way to win on a night in which their stud, Justin LeBron, didn't have his best night, but he did drive in a couple runs, which was the difference in the game for Alabama last night.
I guess for me, and it's not really anything that has a punctuation about midweek or not. We could talk about a really fun game last night between Auburn and UAB, or we could even talk about some of the other things that are happening. I think the biggest springboard moving forward in this last week, before we get into conference play and we start getting into the routine that we all really kind of crave as baseball fans, because that's what baseball is. It is a routine. But part of that routine is the word momentum gets thrown around a bunch in sports. I'm going to use a different version of that because I think it's more fitting in baseball. I'm going to use the word inertia, because inertia is important, because things that are in motion tend to stay in motion. But conversely, things that are stationary tend to stay stationary. So Texas A&M, you are stationary. Somebody like Alabama, somebody like, until last night, Auburn, when you are moving forward and you believe in those things, the momentum is a positive and a negative in a lot of ways. And it's especially true in baseball, because Crash told us, if you believe you're playing well because you're wearing women's underwear, then you are. That's what it is. So the conversation points moving forward, like if I'm South Carolina and I drop 3 to Clemson and I figure out a way to escape on Tuesday night down 3-1 and put up a 5-run sixth that was kind of enabled by a bases loaded walk and another run from a bases loaded hit by pitch, how confident am I compared to a Tennessee team that's about to play the next 2 weeks at home, that is hitting everything that comes close to the plate 400 feet over a wall somewhere? They're clearing more walls than a bunch of Chinese refugees trying to go west. It is a staggering opportunity right now for Tennessee to continue what is a juggernaut. We could look up and this team be not only the first team to 40 wins, but they may be, who knows how good this team can be.
Yeah.
Speaking of Tennessee real quick, Graham, another Andrew, you've talked about this, over and over again, another Andrew Fisher home run last night. That's 4 this week for him. And I saw a stat today about the team as a whole. I think it was on Twitter or X, 2.82 home runs per game. They're on track to break LSU's single season record in about 60 or 65 games, something like that. So if they make Omaha, very well on pace to break that.
Tennessee's scoring more than Arthur Fonzarelli at the prom. This is nuts.
Yeah, you want to know what's crazy? Well, no, Tennessee did pass Alabama yesterday, so scratch that. But Alabama kind of in that ballpark. They've scored 158 runs. Tennessee has scored 163. Alabama's now had 1 more game. So a little bit of separation there, but everybody talks about Tennessee's offense. Alabama's has been in that ballpark too.
Very much so. Georgia, too. Georgia's hit, I think, is like the 5th most home runs this year. I know, because I know Oregon's up there. East Tennessee State is a random team up in there, but I think they're 5th right now. They're a little bit behind Tennessee, Oregon, and Alabama blanked on me. But, yeah, and I think as for them, the formula, I guess we haven't talked about them yet. the formula for them really heading into Columbia is just continue to have your top end guys hit. I mean, Slade Alford, every time I look up, he's hitting a home run. Trey Phelps has at least a hit in pretty much every game he's played in. It feels like Ryan Black has just been so great in support for them. And with that bullpen they have, I think it's going to be a clean sweep of Columbia. So they're another team. I know I saw some people have called them out for maybe who they've played so far, but at the same time, they're looking the part. And that's what really sticks out to me about Georgia. So, I know the fifth in the country ranking is not necessarily like people look at that and kind of tilt their head because of who they've played, but they're up there with Tennessee and Alabama hitting. I don't know about runs though, Chris. I mean, if you have that in front of you, where they're at with that, but home runs, they're right up there with the rest of the top of the pack.
Yeah, I've got it in front of me. Georgia has scored 146 runs. Unfortunately, it just doesn't let me sort, but I think that's eyeballing at third in the league. Now, I'm glad you brought up Georgia because I got a little question about Georgia. And look, I was watching the game yesterday at Athens, but I mean, the ball was flying out of that yard at Foley Field, which it tends to do. They did play some of their earlier games in damp Wilmington where the ball didn't carry at all. But we talked about Georgia's pitching and the number of arms combined with, I thought they had some guys at the top of the rotation that were pretty good if they could stay healthy. So far, it's not really gone that way. Georgia's leading the SEC with 76 walks and is next to last in team ERA at 3.94. Again, don't know how much of that correlates to weather, opponents, whatnot, but I was expecting a little bit more from Georgia's pitching. Georgia's been kind of the team that people are picking on is overrated. I thought coming into the season they could maybe crash that top 5 or 6 conversation, but that is one thing that I want to see sorted out this weekend. Let's flip the script. We've got about probably 17, 18 more minutes before we need to get out of here, maybe 20. But Jay brought up something. What do we know and what do we need to know at this point? Those are some things I'm kind of watching this weekend. I'll just throw it to you guys. Either focus in on a couple things you know or a couple things you want to know after this weekend. Jay, I'll start with you this time.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and address the elephant in the room, and let's just take Texas A&M off the table because, I mean, I think you said it best when you kind of brought us into this conversation about how much of it is not the 6 miles of talent they have, but the 6 inches between their ears. Mm-hmm. So in that conversation, I mean, I think every eye turns to Texas A&M a little bit just to see, okay, not necessarily if they're going to get started, but when. And then, because if that conversation turns back to if, then they've got a real problem. Because, I mean, that's a whole different kettle of fish. I mean, I think for me, I think what we know are the teams that score are always going to be in games. Because, I mean, I don't know who's sitting in our group chat, but I think we're headed for a whole lot of 12-8s. I mean, especially when you're talking about Saturdays and Sundays, and we get a lot of the ones in this league. I mean, I think the thing we know is if you don't have guys 5 through 9 who are putting bat on ball and flipping your lineup over, you're going to have a hard time keeping pace in a league like this where you're going to look up and teams have put 3 crooked numbers on the board before you get to the 7th inning stretch.
So I guess my question would be, what can we pinpoint that to? Like, what would you attribute that to, all the runs and hits so far?
Well, I think all the runs and hits, and I don't know if this is an anomaly or if this is like a seismic shift to the game, because I saw a stat earlier on social media that according to the NCAA, the average age of college baseball players this year is almost 22 years old. It's 21.9. Mm-hmm. And up in over the last 3 years, that's up almost 2 full years. And we all know that Major League Baseball is going to overpay and covet arms. So as they continue to draft the young kids who can really sling it, the hitters are going to stick around and play in college and get NIL money. So you've got older, more mature hitters, and younger, inexperienced pitchers trying to figure out ways to get them out. I don't know, Graham, if that is my just ballpark guess or if that's a thesis that may be proven out. But I think we're talking that the bats are more developed than the arms. And when you go to an elite level like this, I mean, heck, you've got even in the midweight games, you've got some of the teams that are overmatched in terms of size, payroll, money spent. They're scoring 6, 7, 8 runs against these SEC staffs.
Mm-hmm. I do think you're on to something. I don't care what sports you play. If you have guys that have a lot of experience, I mean, that's going to be a recipe for success.
Absolutely. And especially, I think the power numbers, Alfred, kind of prove that out too. You've got older, stronger dudes.
You got a ton of older, stronger dudes. I mean, you look across the league at the home run totals. You already have Tennessee, obviously, with 38, Alabama with 30. There's plenty of teams up over 20 home runs even. I mean, Ole Miss with 22, Arkansas is over 20, Georgia, we talked about, up over 30. Texas broke that kind of barrier, and Auburn did too, of 20 plus. I mean, there's significantly, I know that's kind of unfair because we're talking about the best conference in the country, but there's just a clear amount of, home run inflation happening and stuff. And it's making it more of a challenge, when you play these small schools. Like I mentioned earlier, who would have guessed East Tennessee State was second in the country in home runs this year? You know what I mean? That's just super random and obscure. And, those are teams you're playing. Those are the type of teams you're playing in the midweek. So I think that contributes to what's happening to A&M a little bit, and it's throwing them off guard along with the pressure of being number one heading into the year.
And not to dominate too much, but another topic I think for the group in terms of what I don't know, Chris, and what I'm hoping to find out, and we're going to find it out very quickly once the conference gets here. A lot of these teams, not unlike college, the SEC in basketball this year, have put up gaudy numbers going into the conference. Who's going to be Oklahoma? Who a month into the conference schedule we're going to look up and is going to be 4-12? I mean, because somebody's going to have to be. Not every. Yeah. I mean, everybody who's got double-digit wins right now. Okay, granted, Missouri's going to struggle. We know that. But everybody who's got double-digit wins right now and who's flirting with being ranked or thinks that they are a College World Series contender, you're about to go into the conference gauntlet, and who's about to go from filet mignon to mincemeat?
Yeah. A couple of things. I think we kind of know what Tennessee is. The arms are dominant again. The bats are dominant again. I feel like LSU is going to be there. I feel like that pitching staff is super duper talented. I feel like Florida's got a chance to be there. But the health, the injuries are starting to add up. Now, that's a really deep team. And that's how Florida dealt with it in Omaha last year. And in the postseason was with depth. So I think Florida is in that classification. I guess after that, the question is, can somebody else get in the vicinity of that top group? I think Arkansas with the pitching maybe can. The power starting to come. Looking off to my right to make sure I don't skip a team here. I kind of wonder what Texas is. Auburn is intriguing for a lot of reasons. Kentucky's always kind of sitting back there, not getting noticed at all this time of the year. And I think Vanderbilt, to me, is maybe one of the biggest wild cards in the league. Because you look at the home run stats, you got Tennessee with 38, Alabama with 30, Georgia with 34, a bunch of teams in the teams in 20s, and Vanderbilt sitting back there at 7. Only Oklahoma has got, they've got 11 home runs. That's the next lowest total. Let me check Missouri. Even Missouri's got 13. So that's one thing to watch is, can Vanderbilt muster enough offense? Is the roster constructed? Is there more power in there? I don't know. Those are just some questions for me. Some things I think I know and some things that I'm not sure about. Go ahead. Who's got next?
I had a kind of a build off that, look going into conference play type of thing. I like how, Jay, you mentioned South Carolina a little bit. It's pretty dejecting. I feel like getting swept in the fashion they did in college baseball's biggest rivalry, for the sake of what I'm talking about. You're kind of like, that's not what we wanted to happen at all. Obviously, in fact, it's the exact opposite. And they go out and they outscore Davidson in the Citadel at 16-4. in the next 2 games. The question with them, I think, is they have the 3rd best pitching in the conference outside of Tennessee and Kentucky. That's been really kind of solid for them. It's just this offense. I mean, you look, we talk about A&M like, beating on a drum over and over again. They're the next worst offense off of team average in the league. So that's kind of been the up and down part. Obviously against Clemson, that was the bad part, because that Clemson pitching staff shut down South Carolina all weekend. And you're going to go up against Clemson level teams in the SEC all the time. So that's the big question heading in. And this weekend against Morehead State, you kind of want to get a lot of good offense in, because even that midweek after that against Georgia State, you're playing a good Panthers team that's toward the top of the Sun Belt. And I mean, they were competitive against Georgia when I watched them, and they were competitive again last night against Georgia, because they had that big 9-run inning that kind of inflated that Georgia team ERA a little bit. So that's my thing with South Carolina, is they can kind of sneakily work their way toward at least the middle, or maybe even top of the SEC if their offense comes through, even in the slightest, because the pitching's been there. So that's my outlook on the Gamecocks too. That was something else I noticed. That was pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to throw around the horn here. Again, we're not going to sit here and pick every series. One reason is we got about 10 minutes left. But I'm going to start. I'll go Graham, J, Alfred. Give me, because I think on paper every SEC team would be favored. Tell me if you're going to pick an upset. I think our default is we're expecting most of these teams to win. So tell me if you're going to pick an upset somewhere, or maybe if you're on the fence, who's on upset alert this weekend. Start with you, Graham. Or we can kick to Alfred if you need a minute.
I think everybody, I mean, when you look at the whole slate, there's nothing that really just jumps out to you. I think if there's going to be like an upset potentially, it's going to be, what Mizzou does. Mizzou needs as many wins as possible before SEC play starts. So to me, the question is, can Mizzou get 2 and hopefully 3, because this is things are about to kick up another gear here next weekend. So all across the league, I think everybody's in really, really good shape. Nothing just really kind of stands out to you. So Missouri would be my one. If somebody's going to lose, just kind of circle that one. Not saying that they will lose, but it's certainly the biggest threat for me, at least.
Jay, I'll go to you next.
Well, I kind of touched on it a little bit. I think if I'm picking one, I think Kentucky better be ready to make certain their batting helmets are polished and their bats are. Side tangent here. I know, Chris, you're old enough to remember this. Graham, you probably were on the cusp, but you may be a little too young for this. Can anybody ballpark guess how much money is spent on bats? I mean, I can remember the days where we as a team had 2 bats. A team had 2 bats, and they were in a green duffel bag, and we had 4 helmets. Now we can go to a 14-year-old softball game, and there's $10,000 in bats in the dugout. So that said, Wofford can score. So do I think Kentucky wins the series? Of course. Do I think Kentucky potentially sweeps them? Maybe. But I think Wofford you're going to look up, and that's going to be a 3-9-7 games either way, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've got an 11-year-old who plays something between rec and travel ball. We'll be to travel in a couple of years. I'm about to find out, but yeah, it's not. I've already seen as long as or 8, 9. Like bats are not cheap even at that age. If you want to get a decent one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then you start looking up and you face a dominant pitcher and you think, man, our team's got $5,000 of bats in the dugouts and we got 2 hits. I mean, the return on investment right here isn't all that great.
Yeah, it's a little ridiculous, but anyway. Alfred, your turn.
Yeah. Side note on Kentucky and Wofford. Wofford second in the country in steals behind VMI's astounding 90 steals this year. Wofford has 48 as a team. Small ball.
Wait, say that again.
VMI has 90 steals this year as a team.
Oh my goodness.
Jeez.
Yeah. Did a story on it this morning. Pretty nuts.
Okay.
Wofford second behind them, 48. That's just incredible. But they are really good at stealing bases. So is Kentucky. Small ball and small ball. How much on sliding mitts, guys? Sliding mitts. It's a newer piece of equipment to the game, but
we're going to find that one out too.
Out there. Yeah. Yeah.
Are
so
you talking about the oven mitt gear that these guys pull out that Ronald Acuna made famous? I mean,
yeah,
I'm waiting for him to go like to the easy bake oven down the third base line and pull out pull out some muffins or something. I mean, come on.
Hey, if Jazz Chisholm has it, I have to have it. You know what I mean? But the series I'm looking out for, Chris, I mean, you've kind of like made it, out to be, it might be a good one. I think it's just an upset based on, SEC versus out of conference. I'm going to go Xavier Vandy. I feel like Vandy, like for all the reasons you've mentioned, the offense there's more to be desired, whether it's power hitting, maybe patience at the plate, although they might have improved that a little bit in these midweeks. That's the one that sticks out to me. I mean, Xavier, I know they didn't play as good against Tennessee, during their midweek game, but that's going to make them, that much more motivated heading into Nashville to play Vanderbilt. So that's the one I'm picking out. I do think I'm going to pick Vanderbilt just because I think they're going to want to get that series win in before SEC play. But that's my little upset pick, is that one happening at Hawkins Field.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at a combination of Kenneth Massey, some other, because RPI this time of season is just so wonky. I don't know that it tells you a lot. Power rankings, Kenneth Massey has got Xavier, I think, in the top 50, maybe 52, and I think Wofford is in that territory too. I looked up Old Dominion. I think they're around 101, 102. That was one I thought about for Auburn, because Old Dominion's a club that's been in regionals recently. New Mexico State, kind of an average club, so that's not a team that is dangerous on paper. Portland would be another one. We mentioned Portland having thrown a perfect game recently, and West Coast Conference teams are not always easy. That's a pretty good, not a great, but a good baseball league where they play a lot of West Coast style ball. Now Arkansas can play a little small ball too in field, so that may not make it as difficult. To me, I think the series to watch, I think Vandy Xavier would be top on my list. Xavier's an old club, but I think Vanderbilt's a team that's got to figure some stuff out. Xavier knocked him out of a regional a couple years ago too, so there's also that. So I think that's one to watch. Arkansas, Portland, I'm watching just because I want to see injuries pitching-wise. Wofford, Kentucky, I think would be a top 2 series with me, along with Vanderbilt, Xavier. And I think other than that, it's just seeing who holds serve. Texas, Santa Clara is one that you mentioned. Let's see exactly how dangerous Santa Clara is. Okay, 59 in power rankings, so that's one I'd watch. And there was another one. Let's see how good Sam Houston is this year, because that's a team that's been pretty good at times.
What about
they're okay? Yeah.
What about Jack State, Ole Miss, Graham? What are you thinking?
I mean, I think Ole Miss should be able to take care of business here, especially with the way Hunter Elliott's been pitching. Maddox has been good. And Mason Nichols, the Sunday starter, coming off a career high in strikeouts. I mean, they're one of the games might be close, but I think Ole Miss is feeling pretty confident heading into this weekend.
Yeah.
Jacksonville State also struggled with Alabama, so there's that.
Yeah. If we're picking an upset this weekend, okay, I'll go around the horn. I'll go Graham, Jay, Alfred. If we're picking one straight out, tell me. If we're picking most likely, give me who you got.
Most likely to get upset?
Yeah.
Mizzou.
Okay. Yeah.
That would be my guess.
I keep just kind of
I second that.
From the okay, not Missouri category.
My most likely to get upset this weekend will be my wife, because after Alfred said the wonderful phrase, "If Jazz Chisholm does it, then I've got to have it," I think I'm going to get that tattooed on the small of my back.
Let us know how it goes. Get it on video.
Yeah.
My most likely, I'm sticking with my guns here. Xavier Vandy, my most likely.
I think that's mine too. The A&M one just fascinates me because I want to see, like, if they go out and dominate somebody and you're feeling better, if they struggle with New Mexico State, then I think we have to conclude that maybe we got some concerns that they're not getting. And let's see, they open next weekend with Arkansas.
Oh,
which is not the team you want to face when your bats aren't working.
no.
Correct.
So,
Where is that game, Chris? Where is that series? Because honestly, this is one of those times in sports, it would not be the worst thing in the world for that to be on the road. And you galvanize and you get everybody in your own little circle and you feel a little extra motivated as opposed to the pressure of an uneasy fan base going, what the heck is wrong with you guys?
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Unfortunately, it appears that game is in College Station. Let me just double check.
Chris,
to make sure.
I think they play Alabama March 14th.
Oh, okay. You know what? I'm looking at a logo schedule, and the Arkansas and the Alabama ones are right next to each other, and they're very similar. So you're right.
Still not the team you want to play.
No,
Like,
I mean, I don't know who you want to play at this point.
Right.
Other than maybe Missouri, but yeah, okay. It looks like, in fact, they do play Arkansas, but it's 6th weekend of the year. So thank you for catching that.
Enjoy your baseball. Enjoy the SEC tournament, Graham. Alfred, and enjoy your Jazz Chisholm fandom. And man, let's hope the weather turns. Can we? Can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, football time. You're going to catch Jay and Chase in just a minute talking SEC football, so we got to let you go. God bless you. Have a great weekend. For Graham Doty, Alfred Esmond, Jay Greason, I'm Chris Lee. Thanks for watching baseball content here at Southeastern 16.